Hi guys, it's Chaska. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing 10 tips for beginner backpackers. So it's been almost a week since I came back from traveling a year abroad, and a couple of days ago I sat down and decided to write down some tips that I think are very useful if you're traveling for the first time as a beginner, or if you're maybe traveling alone for the first time. So the first tip I've written down is a very important one, and it starts at the beginning of your trip, which is packing. And when it comes to packing, I promise you less is more. It can be pretty hard if you're going to go away for a couple of months or maybe even a year in my case and have to decide what to pack. But you really want to have space in your backpack, especially if you're traveling around. You're going to pick up a lot of stuff, you're going to lose a lot of stuff. You want to be able to buy new things, so don't overdo it. Especially when you're going to like nice warm destinations. I found it really difficult when I left to pick the things I was going to bring, because there's so many things I thought that were going to be really cute, but there's also a lot of things that I never wore back home, and if you don't wear them back home, you're not going to wear them out there. Once we traveled in Thailand for a bit and then got to Australia, there was already quite some things that in 2 months I hadn't even worn one time, so obviously I didn't really need to bring them. So maybe that one dress you've never worn but you think will look so cute in one of your Instagram pictures in Indonesia, you don't really need to bring it. Just bring things that are going to make you comfy and happy and you want to wear almost every time of the week, and you can rewash, because you'll definitely be wearing a lot of the same clothes when you're backpacking. Number 2 is very important, which is travel insurance. I cannot stress enough how important this is. It's simply a case of just being better safe than sorry. When you've saved up all your money, it can be a bit of a bummer if you have to spend a good amount of money on a travel insurance before you even left the country, because this will set you back a bit in your savings, but it will save you so much money if something happens to you. It might seem like it's not worth it to spend so much money before you even start your travel, but if something happens out there, you'll be so glad you only spend maybe a couple of hundred instead of a couple of thousands. The number 3 is a tip that is an app that I really used, which is obviously not sponsored, but an app I've been using ever since I started traveling and sleeping in hostels, and the app's called Hostel Rob. So it's a really easy app that just compares all the different hostels in the area. You can just filter for prices and find really cheap places. And my tip is I usually book 1 or 2 nights, then you pay a little deposit and you pay the rest when you get there. And I usually book 1 or 2 nights because I just want to see what the hostel's like. Obviously the reviews aren't always exactly what the hostel is like, so just book 1 or 2 nights, see what it's like, and if you like it, you can always extend your stay. So yeah, Hostel Rob makes it super easy to just compare them, and you can also book very last minute. So I had the habit of always just booking my hostel as I was on the way to my next destination, which is really easy through this app, and it's what I've constantly been using. Tip number 4 is to be flexible when it comes to your planning. So it is good if you go to certain countries to know more or less the highlights or the big main things you want to see, but don't be too tight on your schedule. Like, the point of traveling is that you want to be flexible, you want to be able to meet people and decide to go travel with them. If you like a place, you might want to be able to stay longer, and if you don't like it, you might just want to leave right away. Especially the first time I was traveling by myself, I find it kind of difficult to decide how long am I going to stay where and what am I going to see. So I love like reading into things a little bit online, things that seem cool to see or things that I would love to see on my travels, but just pick a couple of highlights and let the rest kind of happen to you. Number 5 is a budget tip, which is obviously very handy if you're backpacking on a budget, and it's to eat local. It's not only a super good way to get to know the culture and enjoy all the delicious food, which is literally the reason why I love traveling so much, but it's also usually a lot cheaper than Western food in non-Western countries, and you'll find that if you do crave a pizza or everything now and then, they're usually not as good as you're used to back home. So try and stick with local food as much as you can. It's not only delicious but also a lot cheaper. 6 is a bit of a health tip, and it is get your vaccinations, use your mosquito spray. You do not want to get malaria. Make sure you have malaria tablets if that's a possible thing to get, maybe of your insurance or your GP back home. It's just good to be well prepared, especially when we were traveling. For example, in Indonesia, there's something called BALI. It's basically traveler's diarrhea. I'm not going to make it any cuter than it is. You get it in a lot of destinations you're going to travel to, not only in Indonesia, but in the whole of Southeast Asia, South America, and it's just something you can avoid if you're a bit careful. So try and not eat salads if you didn't wash them yourself. Try and only eat fruit if you cleaned them yourself, or maybe took the skin off. Avoid ice in water. When I went to Vietnam the first time by myself, I didn't know that they put ice, for example, in orange juice or things you wouldn't really expect it in, and because you don't know if this ice is filtered ice or just frozen water, you might want to avoid it just in case. For my 7th tip is a bit more about local culture. It can be really good to know a bit of the basics about the place you're going. And I'm obviously not saying that you have to completely conform to these norms, you just want to be respectful. In a lot of very touristy areas, it doesn't matter if you're walking around in your bikini and shorts, but you don't want to be the only one walking around like that when the rest of the women in the country are all covered up, for example. So again, when you're in hostels on the beach, whatever, doing your own thing, or in the more touristy cities, it very depends in where you are as well. You're usually very free to dress however you want and in a very Western way. But if you go to a bit more rural or local places, you might want to dress a bit more like the locals. But for example, when you go to temples or go to a lot of local places, make sure you're not the only one showing a lot of skin. As I said, this is for me mostly just to respect local culture, but unfortunately in some cases it can also be for your own safety. If you're traveling alone as a girl, there is certain areas, especially if you're going from place to place, where you don't want to walk around showing too much. And as I was saying, of course that should be up to yourself, but you also want to be smart about it. You're traveling by yourself in a foreign country where things can be very different. So in some cases you might want to travel covered up a bit more just for your own safety. Number 8 is a tip for arriving at the airport. So what I noticed the first time I came to Bangkok by myself was that I was insanely overwhelmed by the amount of people shouting taxi, taxi, taxi. When you just get into a new country and you're by yourself, you walk out of the airport and it's a bit overwhelming. There's a lot of people trying to get you in taxis. You don't know exactly what's normal, what's not. Some people might even be wearing uniforms and will still try and rip you off. So for a good price, I think a good tip is always insist on putting on the meter. Before you get into a taxi, show them the address and tell them put on the meter. If they don't want to do that or they just say a price, also do not be afraid to say no. There will be so many people out there, so many taxis that will want to take you and something better will come along. Another one when it comes to that is if it doesn't feel safe, do not get in. If you feel very pressured to get into the taxi, people start pulling your bags and try to put it in a trunk already, just kindly say no thank you and walk away. Again, you won't be stranded. There will be someone else who is willing to take you. Another option as well, if you're traveling by yourself and you just arrived from a flight, is find some other backpackers who might want to share a ride with you. Number 9 is a tip that I had to learn the hard way, especially in Australia, which is that even though it's easy, you don't always want to book the whole tour they have set up in the hostel for you. It can be a lot more expensive than actually going to the place. When we were in Byron Bay, there was a little desk downstairs in the hostel, and in Australia I found there was a lot of places like this. The hostel would have a little information desk that would book tours for you as well. This is very easy because they can book multiple tours for you. They usually do deals, but we ended up finding out that everyone else on the boat we were going on paid almost $100 less each by just getting their ticket in that place. So even though it might seem easier and they can also pressure you a bit into constantly looking at their flyers, don't be afraid to ask them for information, but then don't book a tour and just get it somewhere else. And then last but not least is tip number 10, which is enjoy yourself. Especially when you're traveling out by yourself, you are doing this for you, you're not doing this for anybody else. If you like something, stay. If you don't like it, please leave. Everybody always says that you're traveling, you're gonna meet so many great people, but if you don't meet people right away, or if you're in a group that you feel like doesn't really suit you, you don't have to hang out with them. You're here by yourself, you're completely doing this to enjoy yourself and do what feels good. So see the things you want to see, don't feel pressured into doing anything you don't want to, but also don't be scared to get out of your comfort zone every now and then. As well, make sure to rest when needed. I felt that in some days, even when I was traveling by myself, I felt really guilty if I wouldn't do anything or see anything. If I was in cities with a lot of culture or a lot of things to see, well, I'm there by myself. I don't know why I would feel guilty. Nobody is telling me you have to do this, you have to do that. So make sure you rest. It's a lot of new impressions, especially if you're traveling for the first time. There's a lot going on, your days might be long, you're seeing a lot of things, so rest when you feel like you want to rest and only do the things that truly make you happy. And that's it for the 10 travel tips, guys. I really hope this helped you. Maybe if you're going traveling for the first time, I hope you have the best time ever. Or maybe you've been traveling for a while and you're just interested in things that I've learned during my travels. I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and I can't wait to see you in my next one. Bye!